Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Today's image was created by Simon, who's an intermediate photographer from California. Simon recently created this image on the Mindful Eye Spirit of the City, San Francisco workshop. Simon shot this with a lensbaby. He's overlooking a cliff here, looking down to a beach that's near Rodeo Beach, which is in Marin Headlands. It's a place where we went to shoot landscapes for the day on the workshop. One of the things I like right away about this image is how Simon has worked with both the lensbaby and an extreme point of view here to abstract this scene. I know that it's a beach, but because of the distortions of the lensbaby and this extreme view of looking straight down on a subject, I start to pay attention to more of the intrinsic ideas in the image. I start to pay more attention to shape and form and quality of line. And I almost start to get a sense of something that's more like a face or something that's alive at the level of, an animal instead of the idea of just sand and water and beach and rocks and things that are more inanimate. So I'm really enjoying that part of the abstraction in the image. The other thing that I love here is it's a real classic image in terms of an example of how repetition or rhythm or repeating can be a very powerful bit of design that we can use to create a feeling of visual unity for the viewer. Most viewers are going to go right here to this area of high contrast. They're going to take in these sort of shapes and qualities of line, and then as you move out from there, almost all the positive and negative space shapes that you see everywhere in the image are suggesting these shapes, qualities of line. It just keeps happening over and over again in the image. Another thing I really like about this image is a really beautiful image to look at in terms of takeaways and things that we can learn about color theory. Red and black and yellow and black. Two very powerful color combinations in nature. So much of the time when you see these colors together, it's a visual warning. And so these color pairs can have a big psychological effect on the viewer, even when they appear out of the context of the literal subject matter, like a snake or a flying insect that has this color scheme or wears these colors to warn. And the other thing that's beautiful here is a red, black, and white, another great color idea, color triad. Red and white play really well together. White's the absence of color, so it's very visually powerful. Red's the most dominant color, and a little bit of red can balance a lot of white, and we're seeing that here. So you get this beautiful asymmetric or dynamic balance between red and white. Really beautiful to see different versions of green playing off of the red here. Red and green color complements from the painter's color wheel. Blue-green up in here, opposing the red down here, and you also get green mixed in with the red. Primary green, yellow, green, so on and so forth. Lots of things to really love about this image, including this really beautiful moment with the water moving in to this shape, just the feeling of opposing energies and the way those ideas work together. One of the takeaways from today's critique is something that I hope that I say enough, but maybe I don't say it enough, just the idea of that the daily critique is really mostly about the idea of learning the language of visual design and an encouragement to spend some time getting more conscious about what it is we're trying to say about our images, getting to the point where we can develop a language so that we can look at our own work and look at other people's work and feel our way through it and talk about what we like and what we don't like. There are some people that will say that if you do this kind of work that it will sort of corrupt you and you'll become a visual slave to the idea of design. And I've always laughed at that. I've always just thought that it was absurd to the point of being funny, because you're being, if you want to call it, corrupted in the context of your life all the time. You drive down the road, you look at a billboard, visual design is hitting you over the head. You open a book, you open a magazine, you go online, you turn on your TV, you go to the movie theater. We're being bombarded by visual cues all the time that are quote-unquote corrupting us or teaching us, whatever words you want to use there, about design. Wouldn't it be neat to be more aware of what's happening? And that's what this show is about. What it's not so much about is the changes that I make, because I'm just one person. And so I really want to encourage you today to remember that. If you're interested in feedback in your work, and I've never met anybody that was. I've met some people that said they weren't, but then what I come to find out almost all the time about those people is they just don't like feedback. They don't deal well with it. In other words, I don't ever meet anybody that takes pictures and puts them in the safe deposit box at the bank. Those people that are telling me with their chest puffed up that they don't care, they're that big of an artist, they're showing me their work while they're saying that. And so I know what the subtext of the conversation is. I'd encourage you to share your work with a lot of people and take it to another level and understand the purpose behind the communication. It's a beautiful filter that can really help you get a lot more out of the feedback loop. I'm bringing that up in the context of Simon's image because after really enjoying this image, we critiqued it on the workshop. One of the things that just didn't feel exactly right to my eye was how heavy this side was. And I love red, so I thought, why not add more red in here to break this up? It would create this feeling of red moving along as sort of a continuous idea, which would oppose this idea over here. It's kind of an image that could have more symmetry because the main ideas are centered. And Peter Baker, who was my absolutely fantastic co-teacher on this workshop, he said, no, instead of adding something to make this better, why don't we subtract something and simplify it? And he suggested a crop from the right like this, and we did this crop, and I thought, yeah, this is much tighter. And Simon said, yes, I like this version better than this version. And I think almost everybody on the workshop agreed. So again, I'm trying to make several points here, but an overall point is sharing your work with a lot of people, paying attention to the feedback within the context of the purpose for your work could be very powerful. If you want to create a certain feeling and you show an image to 5, 6, 7 people and they're not getting it, and you show it to the 7th or 8th or 10th person, they don't have a problem. You have a problem. You're not paying attention to the feedback loop. And we are always going to be coming up between what I think is just an awesome challenge, the challenge between figuring out the balance between what it is that we want to say and then tweaking it or not so that the message is received by other people. To me, instead of being something that's dirty or horrible or involves corruption or selling out, to me that's almost the whole ball of wax, and this is why I would say that. What I find is that the biggest fear that sort of artists in general, but definitely photographers that take our workshops have when we come down to it, it's not photographing people, it's just putting your work out there at all. And the more we practice anything, the better we get at it. And the more we consciously practice things, then we get better at it very, very quickly. And to me, the best way to consciously practice being in the feedback loop is to know in the first place what it is that you're doing. Have a purpose for your self as a photographer overall, and try to understand what it is that you are saying with each individual shot. A couple of other things that I would mention here. This tightens the image up in a way that's kind of interesting. It makes it more square. And when we move more towards square, the idea of centering becomes more powerful from a visual design element. Now all of the sides are equidistant from each other. There's no more of this leveraging one side against the other that can be so exciting and more of a rectangular crop. And as we make this more square, it tends to work better with the idea of these rocks as a very high energy subject being centered. It also does something else. It tightens up the feeling of movement on one of the major diagonals, and playing the major diagonals, it really doesn't matter now what the framing device is in terms of aspect ratio. The major diagonals are incredibly powerful in design because moving through a space that's two-dimensional on a diagonal starts to create the feeling of the z-axis, or the feeling of depth in the image. It also helps to tie ideas in the image together. We move on a line from one corner to the other to very powerful points in the concept of framing, and that helps to unify things. So it gives us a feeling of moving through the image instead of just on the x and the y-axis. Also helps to tie things together. So this crop actually did quite a few things for the image, and again, it's just something that I didn't see right away. So one more time, mostly this is about the idea of the language of design, and just encourage people to practice being more aware and more on purpose when they're playing around with their images and looking at other people's work. I want to say a huge thank you to Simon for sharing this beautiful image. Big thank you to all the people who took our San Francisco workshop. We had a fantastic time, and a major thank you to Peter Baker, who really helped all of us have a lot better workshop. Peter's a native of San Francisco, and just can't imagine that workshop without him. I want to say a huge thank you to all of y'all for being here on The Mindful Eye. I hope to see you again real soon on the Daily Critique.